All right, this is a recording of a mastermind that I did with David Childers from Keeping Current Matters. We talk about what you can expect for the second half of 2025. David shares what we're seeing out there as far as interest rates and what we're anticipating. We talk about inventory. We talk about number of transactions sold and where we see the best opportunities. Now, when we started on this, David was a few minutes behind getting there. So we took the first 10 minutes where we just really break down some ways that you can follow up with your existing listings in a way that builds relationships, helps you get the price reductions you need, and also get those things sold as quick as possible. So let's get to it.
Now I'm going to go to Gary, and Gary, if you don't mind, I'm going to mute myself while you're doing this. And if you could just share a little bit about kind of what you do on the activity level as far as the communication, because y'all, the biggest thing is that when we're in listings that sit a lot longer, and some of you may have been in the business not long enough to know how this is the typical topic market, communication is key. So, Gary, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you kind of just take it from here on, just showing, if you don't mind, show your screen and show some of that communication, if you don't mind.
Yeah, you bet. Just to give y'all some context. So I'm from Lubbock, Texas. We're about 275,000 population. Our average price point's lower. We're about 285,000 for our average price point. So we're not like a really high property value community. So anyway, we are now entering our third year of a buyer's market. We entered into a buyer's market ahead of a lot of the country. And so we're now basically in our third year of that. And so I think most markets or many markets are more like we are now. So, these type of markets can be challenging. They can either crush you or catapult you depending on how you respond to it. And it's a separation season because it separates the professionals from those who are just treating the profession like a side hustle or a part-time, just amateur, just this position where they're just doing it to just as a hobby, for lack of a better word, and so it allows us to separate better, but it's by our professionalism that helps us stand out to gain market share. And so the way you do that obviously is by increasing the value of your service you provide to your clients. And so sellers are a big part of that. I know a lot of agents are intimidated because a lot of times you're nervous to make the call. You don't have a reason the home's not selling, and you don't want to take heat from your sellers. The way to avoid that is by proactive communication. And what agent in our office says that the difference between a reason and an excuse is who makes the first call or who makes the contact. If you're making the call or contact to your client, it's a reason that you're contacting them. If they make the call wondering what's happening, what's going on, then everything sounds like an excuse to them. So if you are proactive on the communication part, you really reduce the opportunity and frustration for problems and frustration level of sellers. So I'm going to share my screen. I was talking to Jimmy yesterday, just telling him what we do, from our perspective to try to help our sellers be more informed with what to do in the market. So, and I just lost my controls here. Give me just a second. Sorry. So I have, guys, this is very crude. It's just in a Word document. It's a template I have. It's not fancy, whatever. Some of you could doll this up quickly, probably automate it in ChatGPT. I haven't had time to figure that out yet. But every Monday, I send a weekly update to each of our listings with this basic information. So it's just highlights. I start with, and I have two different versions. One is when we first list before we do a price reduction. The second one is after we do the price reduction. I'll show you both. But I just start with the date we went active, how many days we've been on the market, total showings to date, our current price, and then I'll look at the price bracket, broader market, and I'll look at how many showings we've had since we went active in the MLS. And I'll show you a little bit more than that. We use showing time in our MLS to schedule showings, and I'll show you that for those who have that. The number of homes have got under contract since we went active in the MLS, so they have an understanding of what's happening as far as the under contract buyer activity pace around us in the broader market, and then the current number of homes we're competing against in the same bracket. And so I provide this basic data to them, and then I'll just offer my observations and recommendations as a summary to that. And then what I'll do, that's the first version of that. Then once we get to a point where we do a price reduction, then the version changes just a little bit, still basically the same, but I keep the number of days on market, total showings to date, but then I'll also include total showings since last price adjustment so that we have a little bit of a benchmark of what has changed since we did the adjustment. I'll give them the original list price, where we're currently priced, and when we did that adjustment, the number of showings in the last week, the number of contract homes that went under contract in the last week as well, so they can kind of see the pace of the market on the broader market. And again, the number of homes we're competing against on broader market in the same price bracket. And then again, I'll give my observations and kind of a summary once I get to that point. So this communication, I really don't remember the last time I had a seller call me wondering what's going on with their property, or wondering why it's not selling, because this proactive communication prevents or them from wondering. Now, they may not always take my recommendations. Like if I have a client right now that I'm recommending a price adjustment on and she's pushing back on it, but it's in her court and we've had communication about that. And so it takes the pressure off of me because we're using the same marketing program that we've used to sell all of our other listings, some with multiple offers. We're not questioning the marketing, we're questioning the pricing strategy at this point. So the pressure's off me, it's on her, and we're not in a combative situation because I just remind her she's in control of pricing, but this is my recommendation. So if you're proactive in it, it takes the pressure off of you. It makes them feel a little more comfortable that while you can't control the market, you're at least aware of the market and they're also in tune with the market so they can make the informed decisions whether they want to follow your counsel, make price adjustments to reposition themselves in the market, or whether they want to hang out there a little bit longer and run the risk of ended up chasing the market. But either way, they're in control and they've got the information. And by the way, I'll put my email in the chat in a little bit. And if you want copies of this, I'll be glad to send it to you. Again, I know it's nothing fancy, but it's effective with that. So one of the tools that I use, one of the tools I use is showing time, because for those who have showing time in your market, there's reporting features in there. Now, I would imagine most others, I know there's two or three other companies showing systems out there that other MLSs use, and I'm sure that most of them probably have some kind of similar type product. But I start with reports. So you come down the left navigation panel, click on reports. The first one is a listing activity report, which is right in the middle. I lean into this right off the bat just because it gives me a summary of everything. So at the top, you see here, we've had a total of 19 showings. It will show you feedback that you received. And then also you can come down. The thing I like about it too is it will show you if you've made a price adjustment, it will show in there. Well, I don't think I did one on this one. It'll show you where the price change happened and the number of showings since then. So you can track total showings, but then also the number of showings after that point. Now, this house is under contract, so we haven't had a showing in a while on it. But I start with this report, and then just so I can get the summary information I need for the top part of my report, then I go back to the reports function and go down to the bottom where it says target market showing analysis. And this is what I really lean into, or one of the aspects. So I'll go back to when we went active in the MLS. I'm just going to select May 1st for this example here. You pick the price range you need. So in this case, I'm just going to give, since we're a lower price point market, I'm just going to do 350 to 450. You can pick the increments you want to show the charts in. 10,000 is usually pretty easy. And then you type in the community that you're searching. So once you submit all that information, then it pulls this graph. And what's really nice about this graph, you can really see price breaks by $10,000 segments or whatever segment you choose, 50,000, 100,000, 25, whatever's appropriate for your market. But here's what's key is if you have a property sitting just above a significant price break where the activity is significantly different. In this case, say you had a listing at $402,000 or $405,000. You see that since the 1st of May, there's only been 26 showings in our market in that $10,000 price segment. But if you drop at $5,000 to $399,900, you're going to access 200 buyers at 230 showings, a much deeper buyer pool by just moving $5,000 down in price. Same could be said if you're up in, say you're at 432.5 in our market and you drop it just $2,500 to 430, you're going from 44 showings to 202 showings. So just a modest price adjustment allows you to access a much deeper buyer pools where the buyer activity is stronger. And so this is a great tool to use to show your buyers what's happening, to try to motivate them to make an adjustment to not end up chasing the market. There are times like the listing I'm talking about where we're in a price segment of the bracket where we're actually having in the segment where that has the most activity as far as showings, and we're still not getting a lot of activity. And now I'm using that to say, hey, other homes in our market are seeing a lot of showings and we're not seeing it. So that still is a indication we have, a pricing issue there. So these two tools have really helped me stay ahead of the game as far as our sellers go. And again, I just don't really remember the last time that I had a seller reach out to me to complain about what's going on or ask about what's going on, because these weekly reports keep them in the loop and they're making their own decisions because I've already made the recommendation each week whether we just sit tight, whether we make a move or whatever. So anyway,
Hey,
um,
Gary,
yes,
Kevin
ma'am.
Wilkins is asking if you can repeat. Now it's going to be, here's a true test. Can you repeat the sentence that you said, something along the lines of, "You're in control of the price"? Do you even remember what you said?
Well, I just tell them you're in control of the price, but I'm giving you the information you need to make an informed decision. And
Right.
so, there, and in fact, if y'all, Jimmy, if we have time still, oh, I see David just jumped on. I sent an email to one of my sellers this morning, who's holding out on prices. Jimmy, if it's okay, we can take a minute. I'll be glad to show that, what I sent to them. And so, it just let y'all see how I handled that. And full disclosure, I kind of chat GPT this to get me going a little bit on it. And where'd my controls go? Sorry, guys, having some technical issues here. Let me pull that email up right quick, and I think you'll find this helpful in terms of just the nuance of it. Because again, I don't want to get in a combative situation with my clients. And so here is. Sorry, I wasn't planning on doing this, so let me grab where'd it go. So here's the email I sent to my client. You're in control of the price. It's just my job to provide you with the information you need to make an informed decision. With that, I want to offer a quick perspective based on what we're seeing in the market right now. When a home sits too long without enough showings, buyers start asking the wrong question: what's wrong with it? And once that narrative takes hold, even if there's absolutely nothing wrong, we lose some of our strongest leverage. The house becomes stigmatized and we start chasing the market instead of leading it. I totally understand not wanting to feel like you're giving the house away just to get a few more showings, but here's the reality. The right pricing doesn't attract bargain hunters, it attracts serious qualified buyers, the ones who usually make better offers and get to the closing table. Waiting too long often leads to steeper price cuts down the road. The data shows that homes that make timely adjustments usually sell faster and for more than those that wait and adjust in smaller increments. It's not just about the dollars on paper, it's about controlling the story the market tells. And then I go into seller years to date in our market, about right now we're about 76 days on market average. And I tell her that means that on average, homes are going under contract within about 40 days because you have an average 30-day closing time frame in our market. And as of today, we're on the market for 40 days. So I wrap it up with, here's what I suggest. Let's grab a call at your convenience. Just talk through your goals and options so we can make sure we are both on the same page and try to put a plan together that helps you maximize the money out of the sale of your home. And just give me a couple options there. So again, it was a very consultative tone I tried to take. I hope I achieved that with her, and we'll see how she responds once she gets that. So
Thank
This
you
is
so
this
much.
is
And
great.
Jimmy, we've got David
Yeah,
on now if you'd like to make the switch.
absolutely. Yeah. Hey, Gary, thank you so much. That's super helpful. Make sure that you put your contact information down in the comment section because I know that people want to reach out with some questions if they have them on that. Super good information. And so let's get on with David. David, glad to have you here, brother. Can you
Glad
hear
to
me
be
okay?
on.
Everything coming through? Yes, good. Doing great. I'm actually on the road, so I'm gonna let you kind of roll with this. Let me just do this in way of introduction. And I will tell you that I don't believe anybody brings better information to the real estate marketplace any better than Keeping Current Matters and my friend David Childers. David is not only the voice, in my opinion, of real estate for North America, but he's also just a great friend. He's an even better person, and so I'm super excited for this environment where we'll have some Q&A time. But David, I'm just going to turn it over to you. And I've always used the joke that, listen, Superman has his cape, David Childers has his slides.
Man,
So we're going to
I hope
let
we
you
recorded all
roll.
that, Jimmy. That was amazing. So that is good. I,
I'm
I
gonna turn it
see.
over to you. I'm gonna mute myself in this party bus on my way to the regional
uh,
baseball tournament. Okay.
I hear you. I hear you. Tell Gary I said hello in there. All right. Listen, I'm excited to be on with you all this morning, and I apologize. I was running just a little bit late to be able to join, but maybe let's do this. I kind of caught the back end of that talking. I don't know who was talking there, Gary, maybe on kind of price reductions and pricing right now. I've got some information on that I can certainly share with you that I think is critically important. I think there's some things that are, sort of causing that that are important to understand. So we can cover that. But is there anybody, you can come off mute or drop it in the chat here. Is there anything else that you want to talk about? Because I can grab that too. We can just sort of freestyle here for a little bit. So if there's something that you want to talk about, or you're wondering or want some data on, I'm not saying I have it all, but maybe drop it in there, and we'll we'll grab that for you if we can get it, and I'll send it to you. You can send me an email on it. I think right now I'll tell you just a little bit in the last couple of days and what I'm preparing for next week. I've got I see you there, Sarah, the resort market. I've got a little bit of information on that, but I can see what I can find and maybe send it to you if you want me to. If you want to send me an email, David at Keeping Current Matters. Jimmy, certainly probably you and others on the call maybe could speak more to the resort market than I can, and what's happening. But getting ready for, I'll be on a number of different webinars next week, and then I'll be on the road after that at different events. And I'll tell you, one of the biggest requests right now is just how do I have the rising inventory conversation? How do I have the price it right conversation? And I think that's what most folks right now want to deliver to the clients that they're serving. Certainly folks that are thinking about selling, people that are actively selling. I will tell you this, I'm working on a couple of things for expired listings. Recuction does a phenomenal job with expireds, and I got a message yesterday from Curtis Finn, who's the president of Recuction, that expireds. I'll pull up the email here so I don't misquote it. Curtis told me, he said, expireds are up 17.6% first of the year through May 20th. So almost 20% jump in expired listings. That's key right now. And I know probably folks on the call feel it. I think that's important for sellers. I think the pricing conversation is critically important. And so I think that's where I would have us start. Sheila, you said, what does this market represent in your opinion, 1992? Gosh, that's a great question. I think we are in a sideways market, maybe similar to the early 90s, right? Not there are people winning in this market. There are challenges in this market. There are people that are struggling in this market. It's very, very different. I think I'll give you a couple of trends that I believe will continue on for the year here in just a minute, but I'll start off the pricing conversation. I found this quote the other day, and I always find these quotes and I think, gosh, that represents maybe where we are right now. And I'll give it to you, but it's an old Seth Godin quote. He said, people don't believe what you tell them. They always believe what they tell themselves. And that's true in life. There's a psychological term for it. It's called narrative circuitry. And we don't always believe what we read or we see, but if we think it's believable, we'll tell ourselves that, and so I think some of the headlines that are out there are scaring people in a couple of different ways. I've gotten several folks that have sent me emails or YouTube videos about, price softening and just about every major market. And I do believe that's true. And I'll show you the facts on that. I don't think we should be scared about it. But I also think there's a disconnect sometimes with sellers where they think, we'll put it on the market, we'll sell it for 50 times what we bought it for, and we'll sell it in 2 days and let's move on and let's try to get the price we want. But the bottom line right now, and maybe you saw this out there, is price reductions across the country are surging right now. Okay. I think certainly coming off the last couple of years, I'll make a couple of highlights. I know I've got different folks, different friends on here from different parts of the country. Texas, I can't even read that with my glasses, 28%, 21%, whatever it is. Florida, 25%. South Carolina, 21%. You see all over the country, a good number of homes right now, starting somewhere that's too high and having to reduce the price. And Gary, I caught the tail end of your conversation. I think in the market that causes questions, right? People start to go, what's up with that? What's going on? What are the issues? And I think the pricing conversation right now is critically important. The other thing that we know, there are three sort of pieces of information that I would share with you that I would share with anybody thinking about selling. One, what I just told you, expired listings are rising in this country. They're up year to date, just over 17%, call it almost 20%. Two, the number of price reductions in this country is surging, right? And three, and all this information is April, we'll update it next week once we get the May data. More homes are being listed right now than what we've seen in the last couple of years across the country. So sort of think about those things. We're starting to see these headlines saying, hey, prices are softened. We're starting to see reductions come back into the market. We're starting to see more folks say, you know what, we put off selling, we're now going to sell. And I think all of this is sort of leading to what's this, ahead in this market. Even today, I don't know how many people saw inflation came out this morning. There's not a lot of information on it right now, but came in lower than what was expected. That's a good thing for this economy. So a lot of things sort of moving around right now. But if you were to ask me what's leading to all this, there are a couple of things that are very, very key. And I can't remember, Jimmy, last time we were on, if I wouldn't have kind of run in here so fast, I would have looked back to what we talked about last time, but I don't think we went on a deep dive in inventory, if I'm correct. But if we did, I'll give that to you, maybe updated now. But the bottom line is, in the western region of this country and in the South, inventory has recovered compared to pre-pandemic numbers. The reason this is so important is, the way you read this, the blue bars are how much inventory has grown in each region year over year. So think about this time last year compared to right now. If I take the West as an example here, the far right bar, inventory has grown 41%. Well, the other key is it's also grown 4.8% since before the pandemic, call it 17, 18, 19 inventory levels. That is very, very key right now to anybody thinking about, communicating to a seller what's happening. And if I even sort of break it down even further, this is a look at inventory counts seasonally. Maybe some of you have seen graphics like these before, and I'll kind of explain what the storyline is here. But if you notice those blue tinted bars here at the top, that's 2017, 18, and 19. I always think of those as the last three normal years in real estate. So you have 17, 18, 19 right there. And then the red bar here, kind of in the middle, kind of highlight that. That's 2020, the year of the pandemic. We all remember that, try to forget it, but that was sort of the dividing line in our business. In the bars that sort of fall below that, for the most part, are the years following the pandemic. So 21, 22, 23, 24. So where do we sit today? Well, as of April, again, all this will be updated with May here shortly, we cross that threshold in this country. So that's why you see the headlines that are correct, that there are more homes on the market today than there have been in the last 5 years. Right? More homes on the market since the pandemic, whatever that headline reads, which is correct. And if you ask me, that number will continue to rise if you see sort of my cursor, and will put us, by the time we end this year, somewhere around where we ended the years prior to the pandemic. So it's a 5-year cycle in sort of the depletion and then recovery of inventory that's having a massive impact on price, right? There was a survey done by Realtor.com that 8 out of 10 sellers right now believe they will get their asking price or higher. 8 out of 10 sellers believe that right now. But what we also see are price reduction surging. I mean, prices are list price and asking price is coming down. And I can even show you some other graphs that show median asking price basically goes like this, median sales price goes like this, and there's this delta, this gap in the middle there. So I think having the facts right now about what's happening in inventory right where you're at, certainly I'm talking about the national market, and every market right now in this country is operating a little bit differently. Florida down where you're at, Jimmy, a lot of inventory. Certainly Miami market. You and I were down there a few months ago, and I continue to talk to people in Miami. I live up, outside of Washington, D.C., still a tight market. You want to buy something and it's selling fairly quickly. We live in a more insulated market. But I think if you sort of play this out, okay, let's go back to what I said. This kind of first one, softening in just about every major housing market. Expect to see more of those headlines. Then you go, okay, now I see another headline that says more homes are on the market right now. So what you're telling me is prices are starting to come down. More homes are on the market. Where does this all lead to? Is this, I think somebody put in there before, is this 1992? Well, it's a market that could be very similar to that. That was an interesting real estate market. I remember it well just because I was finishing up high school, and my folks had their home on the market and likely overpriced, and it sat. Right? That's going days on market rising. Certainly the case. But if you were to ask me, Wall Street Journal said this: so far this spring, supply is increasing faster than demand. That's the moral of the story. Inventory is rising. Some sellers have been, waiting and kind of put it off, and they're like, hey, let's get in on the action right now, or let's try to, make a move and do something. And it's having an impact in the market. These are the states right now that are seeing most of the decline: Florida, Texas, Louisiana, Arizona, Colorado. I was out in Arizona a few weeks ago doing a presentation, and Phoenix, Tucson, and it's actually Havasu City are the three markets in Arizona. I do not think that we will see a price crash. I want to be very clear in this, but I think we're seeing some plateauing in price and slight decline. The average home, I'll skip forward to something, and I'll give everybody this. I always try to give you what by state, year over year. What is this? This is a look. So I'll give you all these state maps. So depending on what state you're in, you can grab your information. The average home in this country over the last 5 years has grown in price by 57%. That's the average number. Down in Florida, Jimmy, it's 74.8. Let's call that 75%. So if you see some slippage in price of 5 or 10%, I want to keep that in perspective for homeowners. If you're thinking about buying, then there are probably not too many buyers that are concerned with that, right? They're like, well, let's see that come down a little bit more. They want to see it, But if you look at it, these are the markets that are sort of leading the way, according to Resi Club and Lance Lambert, in declines from the peak. Most of these markets went up dramatically and have come back to that. I don't think they're going to, you're going to lose all the value of the last 5 years. But certainly we're seeing prices start to adjust based on largely two things: the rise in inventory and the challenges that people feel with affordability. There's still plenty of people that want to buy. They just can't pull the trigger based on their ability to afford what they want. Maybe at times, it's like anything. You go to the store and you look at something, or let's take our business. You go and look at a $700,000 or $800,000 house, $600,000 or $700,000 house, what it is, and now you got to look at a $400,000 or $500,000 house, or do whatever math on that you want to. It's not you don't like it as much, right? And I want the nicer one. I want the one that I saw, and folks are like, you know what, we'll wait. And I also think there's in this country right now and I get this question a lot: when will mortgage rates come down? Sort of this buyer feeling of, I'm just going to wait till mortgage rates come down. And so I certainly think there are things to contend with. But the bottom line is right now, I've said this: if the price isn't compelling, it's not selling. anything that's priced right in this market will sell. If you're overpriced, you will not sell, right? Danielle Hale said this. She said the rising share of reduction suggests that a lot of sellers are anchored to prices that aren't realistic in today's market. Today's sellers would be wise to listen to feedback they're getting from the market. You know, I think the other thing you can share with sellers is this right here: price cuts sort of coming back to a normal level. People remember maybe the years of 21 and 22 when you put it on the market, you sell it in 5 minutes, and you sell it for a good deal over asking price, and certainly we are back to a market where normalized, we're seeing price cuts may go a little bit higher than this right here, just as we adjust. People sort of saying, hey, let's just put it on the market and see what we get. And I think that trend is going to continue throughout the next several months at least, if not into the second half of this year. I do believe we'll see very anemic price growth nationally in this country, probably 1% to 2% in residential real estate this year in 2025. But we're going through an adjustment. I'm going to pull these down for a minute. Certainly going through an adjustment in the number of homes that are having a price shift and having to go and do that. So
hey, David, any information on interest rates or anything changed over the last few months as far as what the analysts are saying or what your thoughts are on interest rates, if you don't mind?
Yeah, I mean, I think they're less optimistic about mortgage rates. 30-year fixed, still most most forecasters are saying we should end the year somewhere around 6.5, 6.75. So I think trying to pin that down is extremely hard. But I think we will see a little bit of relief. I think things will become more certain politically with the tariff situation, with a lot of other things. Again, today, inflation came out and was better than expected. So that bodes well for our business. So I think we'll see a little bit of relief. There are probably people that could answer that question better than I can, but I don't see anybody saying, hey, we're going to get down into the low sixes here this year.
Hey, David, I think obviously like you mentioned, the expired story is kind of interesting, especially for agents from an opportunistic situation. Any updates on any of that, or can you kind of give a little bit of a rundown on what we've talked about in the past about what we're seeing with those opportunities now? What I've always said is the best listing agent to be is the second listing agent, because typically the market's done the tenderizing of the seller to let them understand where the pricing should be. So can you speak to that a little bit as well?
Well, I mean, we're working on all that information right now. It'll come out in June. There are 2 dates on the calendar where more listings expire than any other day. The first one's December 31st, because a lot of contracts are written to the end of the year. The second one is June 30th. And so I think being aware of that and being aware that they've grown year to date by almost 20%, there's 2 folks that are on the call today, no doubt, those that have expired listings or listings that will expire, and those that want to come in and take those expired listings. Those are 2 people that are on the call here. So, I think the challenge with a listing that you have that's overpriced, that is overpriced, is you have to have that hard conversation with the seller. And again, there's people on the call that are better at that conversation than I am, but I can tell you having an honest conversation about price is going to be critical in this market. If you're coming in to a conversation on a listing that's expired, that you don't have a relationship with and haven't listed it, then it's easier to have that hard conversation. The one thing that was interesting, we did a lot of work at the beginning of this year, and I think I shared it with you, Jimmy. is the number one feeling that a seller has when their listing expires is embarrassment. You know, we did this survey with RedX, and they feel embarrassed because they've told their family, they've told their friends, their neighbors, they were going to sell the house, we're moving to wherever, and then we didn't sell it. Right? What does that mean about the home? What does that mean about whatever? And they feel embarrassed. And so I think if you can show up as the person that wants to help, regardless, you know, hey, I'm here, I want to give you my opinion, but I want to help you. I think that will go a long way in this market, but I think some of the prices that folks have their homes listed at are going to have to be adjusted, bottom line. And so up by about 20%. We're doing that work right now, Jimmy. As soon as I have it, I'll bring it back and we can talk about that. But you know, we see this as a market where that's not going to stop. Expired listings are a strategy now and will be, I believe, for the next 3 to 6 months, likely. Just depending on the direction of this market. I saw Cole, I saw your comment there. Tariffs and tax cuts are the wild card. Agree 1,000%. I mean, the forward looking information is what's going to dictate what's going to happen with I'd add inflation there too, which is a byproduct of tariffs. Most folks have thought, hey, tariffs are going to get implemented, inflation's going to rise, and that's going to sort of put us in this situation. I am not head in the sand about that, but I am more optimistic that we will see a little bit more relief. Not to the degree that we probably all wish we would get down to the 5s or something like that, but I think we'll be in a little bit better mortgage environment by the end of the year. We'll see.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, Rosalie, have we got any questions that were in there? Obviously, if you see any of those,
yeah, Jimmy, we have one. Josh is asking, David, you mentioned that inventory levels are returning to something like 2017.
I think we'll wrap the year up that way. Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that puts us nationally near the hyper inventory phase of the real estate cycle, or are we still off that mark?
What's the hyper inventory phase of the real estate?
I don't know. Josh, do you want to jump in?
Jump in, Josh.
Sorry about that. I was trying. So basically just the 4 phases of the real estate cycle where we get to hyper inventory and then we start to see the cool off. Do you think we're already in the cool off because we kind of skipped over that traditional hyper inventory phase with the last couple years? Or do you think we're still there and then we're going to see more of a cool off and this is the dip before the hyperinflation to see the cool off? If we're taking that traditional 18-year 4-phase cycle process, where do you think we're at right now?
I'm not as familiar with that cycle. Let me be honest with you in that. I don't know if everybody else is. I think right now where we sit, if you start to look at it nationally, we are still technically in a seller's market. Okay. From an inventory level, balanced market traditionally has been, around the 6-month inventory level. Somebody just wrote in there, I don't get what he's saying. Are listings impacting their markets or selling, asking this news? Compass is having the effect they didn't want Zillow to have. I'm not sure. We'll get back to those in just a second.
While you're working on that, let me mention one thing. I think, because I am a little more familiar with the 18-year cycle, that's kind of what I follow a little more. And I think it depends on your location. Josh, I think if you're talking like from David from the national level, it's a completely different view than what we're seeing in Florida. And if you look at the Massachusetts market, completely different than what we're seeing on national numbers. They're still lagging. So I think it's a hyper local type of question. I mean, for us, our inventory began and the low of the inventory peaked in 2021. And so here we are, we're coming up on 4 years into increasing inventories. So we may be further along on the excess of growth of that than other places. Does that make sense? And so I think the key is watch the numbers in your local area. Be able to communicate those things. What I like to do with what David presents is to use that as the overall market of what we're seeing, and then bring those numbers into the local numbers that we're seeing in our local market comparatively.
Yeah, I think I'll go back and Josh, in that example, Jimmy can speak much more to that cycle. We are technically still in this seller's market across the country nationally. Now, there are extreme sellers markets, buyers markets. It's the tale of two markets, so to speak, across the country. Two things that are true right now in this country: there are more people that want to buy a home than there are available homes for them to buy. That is absolutely true, and it's true in, I believe, probably every market. The challenge right now is affordability, right? They can't go out and buy the homes they want to buy. So what does that tell you? It tells you that as we see relief in mortgage rates and as we see inventory rise, you have pent up demand. So I think we'll move through this cycle into right now probably what is more nationally a balanced market. But as we see mortgage rates start to maybe drift down a little bit, I think you'll see a lot of buyers that are on the sidelines that'll want to jump back in. Now, I don't think it's going to be 21 level or insanity like that, but I think the fundamentals below the surface are probably atypical of what we've seen historically, because listen, the last 5 years in real estate's been anything but typical, here in this country. So I think that'll sort of dictate what things look like. But the outlook for real estate right now is still going to be upward pressure on prices simply from the supply and demand aspect. There aren't enough homes in this country. Now that's going to vary market by market, but generally speaking, that is the situation we're in.
Yeah, that's good. David, can you share a couple of the slides maybe that y'all are working with right now? This is one of the things that I think the true value is being able to utilize some of the data and the visuals that y'all are sharing that people can utilize on social media. If there's anything in particular, like over the last couple of weeks that you guys have done, that would be great if you can share some of those things and what y'all are highlighting there.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you go, I did a couple of, this one right here. I'm not sharing anymore. Let me go back. So if I was sharing right now, a couple of things that we've done, and you've seen them out there, using the price reduction is like a green screen. You're using a map like this and saying, hey, we're here in Texas, or we're here in wherever, and here's how many price reductions we've seen in the last month. Blah, blah, blah. Right now in our market here in XYZ, this is what we're seeing. Meaning, if you don't get the price right, you're going to have to lower the price, go into the points that Gary was talking about. People are going to ask questions, all that. That is certainly one that I would use and has been used. There's one floating around right now. I don't have it in this deck, but it is the one that shows maybe some of y'all have seen it in the last 24 hours. The average net worth of a homeowner versus a renter. Have you seen that? Which the average net worth of a homeowner is 40 times that of a renter. Just sort of that validation for home ownership, as people kind of go, I'm not sure if I want to do that. I think the other is, and if you, again, I always say this, if you follow KCM's Instagram, you'll see the ones that people are gravitating towards in different scenarios. But I think anything about price right now is getting more traction. So anything that you want to say, hey, look, here's what prices have grown. The other map that I showed you, the percent change in home price over the last 5 years, 57%. When you tell somebody that, or you use that as a green screen, or you show these things, people are blown away. They sort of sense it in their soul, essentially, but they then go, gosh, seeing that, it makes a lot of sense. Seeing that helps educate somebody on those topics there. But I will go back through too, Jimmy. When I send these to you, I'll send you a couple social slides that we have used if folks want to grab those and use them.
That one. Yeah. And Kristen just mentioned in here, he was saying, hey, we kind of need a little context when he's sharing this information with others about, how these price reductions compare to historical price reduction numbers. It actually could be good numbers. And I will tell you, Kristen, I think you're right. I think, look, if we're looking at the cycle, what is the typical play of this? We see this every time where we have hyper increase of prices. And then what we typically see is we see a leveling off. And a lot of times what we'll see is we'll see a crossing over. We'll have less transactions, but prices continue to move up. And then what we see is we see a leveling off of transactions, a reduction in the pricing, which is what we're seeing now. And then they kind of come into line with each other. And then that's when we begin to find a form of bottom for the market, so to speak, if that makes sense. So, David, I'd love for you to share about the number of price cuts because this is good. And Christian, feel free to unmute and ask David directly some of these questions you got on this.
Yeah. Christian, are you there?
I'm here. Thanks for sharing that, David. And this chart is perfect. And I think that shows that we're experts too when we use that first chart where we're showing the percentages and then we put it into context. Because it's easy to just have the headline of like, wow, look at these huge price reductions. Anybody can use that as clickbait. But then when you put it in perspective with a chart like this, then you look like the pro.
Yeah, this is a look. It's a great question. This is a look at price cuts in April of every year going back to 2017. So what you see is sort of in this, 17, 18, 19, I always kind of call those the last three normal years in real estate, somewhere, north of 300,000 reductions in a month in residential real estate. Then we dip down, right? And that's how you explain the market. Nobody needed to reduce their price, or very few back in the last several years. I kind of put those parentheses around there because that's what everybody remembers, right? And it's sort of the hardest thing in life at times, I will tell you, is to meet someone where they're at, right? I don't care if it's your kids, I don't care if it's your spouse, whatever it is, to go, hey, I hear you saying this to me and I want to understand that, right? And I want to meet you where you're at. People remember that. But if you look at it, Christian, since 2021, every year we've seen more price reductions, which makes sense. Folks are like, hey, we're going to list it at this and we're going to kind of move forward in that. But it's actually coming back to a more normal level. I would guess that we'll sort of exceed the normal level as we sort of adjust coming back to expectations and what sellers are thinking. But this does put it into perspective, historically, and what's happened with price reductions.
Hey, I would agree with you, David, from a standpoint that typically when you have the pendulum swing, you're going to have it swing back before it comes back to normalcy, or it will swing a little further possibly than it would in a normal situation. So I would agree with that. I'll also say if somebody's looking for how to do some of those, how to communicate that stuff, Christian is a great example of that. His YouTube channel does a great job. Christian, if you could put some examples up, because David, what you were talking about, whether it be with green screen or whether it be utilizing charts to explain what's happening, that is where you're showing your expertise. So Christian, if you don't mind in the chat, just drop your YouTube channel or where you're communicating more of that possibly on social, because you want to explain kind of, Christian, what you're doing there, because I think it'd be a great context for a lot of agents to utilize like the information that David's providing.
You're very kind, Jimmy. I appreciate the shout out. Yeah,
Christian, go ahead. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Rosalie. I appreciate that shout out, Jimmy. And that's what I do. And I think as an agent, you need to be doing market updates. You do you. I happen to do them on YouTube. You can do them anywhere. You can do them video. You can just do visual posts. But you need to understand the market and be able to talk about it. And what David's sharing is a spectacular example. But I always want to give context and perspective, and I want to show. When I run market data, I do it all the way back to a minimum of 2018. Foreclosure data, I take it back to 2011, and that shows people, hey, this is where we are. This is how it looked before. Another important thing, and we all get into this habit, but the anecdotal versus the actual, like we do it as agents where we'll be like, oh man, the houses are flying off the shelf because I had this one or two listings disappear. But you still need to look at the rest of the market, and that's where David's data really helps. And then just running numbers from the MLS so that you've got actual data. And of course, we say actual data. You could spin it any way you want, but it's important to understand that anecdotal is great, and you can tell those stories, but then you need to back it up with the actual data.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I think you're absolutely right. And I think anytime, there's one thing that's true, and I've mentioned this before. I'm a big fan of Donald Miller. He wrote that book, Building a Story Brand, really, really good. And he said, in everything, trying to tell the story, right? And that's, I think in Christian, when you're telling a story, oftentimes you can start with the anecdotal and say, hey, one of the questions I'm getting most, or one of the things I'm seeing most in the market is sellers often have an expectation tied to the past, right? When homes were selling quickly, they were selling for over list price, or whatever example I want to give there. And then I want to, if you'll notice this, if you'll go to the KCM YouTube channel, you can watch us do this, is I'll say, let me show you something. Let me show you a fact about this market. And I'll give you an example of this right here. I just pulled another slide. This is a look, and I'm not suggesting right now that you just openly share this on a social platform, because people will be like, what? But I'll explain it to you, or you can do a longer form video explaining it. This is a look going back to 2021. The median sales price is I'm looking at my other screen over here, this green bar. And the median list price is the blue bar. So what I would do, and I actually did this with this slide, is I condensed this information down to the last year and drew out this portion right here where the median list price has soared. The median sales price has not as much, right? Creating this, it shows very clearly this gap between what somebody expects and what they're getting in the market. And, you can go and pull this for your own individual market. These are national numbers, of course, but I think, Christian, when you tell like, hey, this is what I'm hearing, this is what I'm getting, let's go look and see what, the facts sort of say. And I think it's extremely important. The other thing I'll say, I'll pull this down real quick, is somebody asked about, I can't remember the type of question. Is there a link to that? William put that in there. On all of these slides, and I'm going to send these to Jimmy after we get off the call, and Jimmy, you can get them out to everybody. Every slide that you see, in the notes of the slide is the source report for that information. So if you're like, hey, where did KCM pull this from? It gives you the link direct to the source, whether it's realtor.com or the census or whatever, builder information, whatever it is. So if you get a question, somebody says, well, Christian or whoever it is, that's weird. Do you have what report did you get that from? You can send it to them. Now, I will promise you, they're not going to look at it. They're not going to read it, but you'll be able to send it to them. But it gives you the confidence to say, hey, I want to learn more about this, or I want to go, and read more about it.
Hey, as we're wrapping up, because I want to be cognizant of everybody's time, David, I appreciate that. Christian, everybody's asking for your channel. If you don't mind, just drop that in there in the chat box there, or you can should be able to just go on YouTube and just look up Christian Walsh to find it. But David, as we wrap up, again, I think that would be great for us to kind of look at that end of June, 1st of July, when the numbers come out on the expires, because I think it's going to be timely, opportunistically for some people. And look, if you all aren't familiar, gosh, I can't imagine you aren't, but try KCM is the best place to go to get details on Keeping Current Matters. It is my source for all of the national information that I utilize. It is what I base a lot of my study on in our local market to see how we're comparing. And so, David, if you don't mind, as we wrap up, anything additional you want to close with, or anything else that you want to add?
Well, I'll just say, hey, we're going to stay on top of this pricing, information and rising inventory information. So, if you're not following KCM, do it. If we can help you, just let me know. Y'all can reach me, David at Keeping Current Matters, my email address. And yeah, Jimmy, when we literally in the last 24 hours have been pulling all this expired data, trying to get it all put together. But I'll do that for you, because we're going to pull everything from how many have expired, what are the numbers when they relist with a current agent versus going with a new agent, how quickly does it sell, all of those things, so that when you go in to talk to an expired listing, you have all the facts. And I couldn't wrap this up better than saying exactly what Christian did. When you communicate to somebody, use the facts, have a relevant market opinion based upon facts. And I think that just in itself, Jimmy, separates us from anybody else.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And also follow David's personal. What I'm loving is David, all the on channel where you're sharing these ideas, you're talking literally what I've done on stuff, David. I'm just being completely transparent here. Is I'll take what you're saying and then I will put it in my own voice and just echo that out. So if you're looking for a model on some of this stuff, follow Dave's personal channel there on Instagram, and it's got some great stuff as well. Thanks for everybody that's participating. When we get this, I will get the slides as well as the video and all this details out to you once we get it edited. And have a great Friday, everybody. Thanks to everybody from across the country jumping on, and we will see you guys next Friday.
Thanks for watching the video. I specifically chose the video below for you because it builds on the one you just watched. I hope it's helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.